Hi everyone and welcome back. Today we are looking at the concept Iife. Okay, Iife means immediately invoked function expression. So you can check out the previous video on how to set up these files. So I'm going to minimize this. Anyways, don't go away. If you are scared about this and you have not heard about it before, I'm going to explain it as simple as possible. So JavaScript is one of the most widely used languages in web development. So there are things that you want to do that you don't actually need to write the code from scratch. So this is where third-party libraries come into place, and frameworks like Angular, React, and Vue, they have many libraries. So when working on larger projects with multiple libraries, it is easy to encounter naming conflicts. And so there are different scripts, different libraries, and different functions and variables with the same name. So we don't want to step on toes, right? So we don't want to have a function in our code and then the library we are using has the same name with that function, and then this is conflict. So let's take an example. So for example, let's say we want to create a function called greet student. How do we define the function? We define the function by saying function and then greet student. Greet student, we open parentheses and then our curly brackets, and we can log a greeting and say console.log log, let's say hello student. Okay, so if we call on this greet student function, we have hello student on the console. This is not the problem. So the problem now is, imagine that we have another script in another application or in another library that has the same function greet student but has a different message. So let's say function greet student parentheses, and then we print to the console.log, let's say hello from another script. So now when we call on the greet student function, which function will run? So if you call on greet student, we have hello from another script. Meanwhile, the function that we wrote or that we want to see is a function from our own app, not the other script, right? So these are stepping on toes, and these are the kinds of conflicts that the Iife, immediately invoked function expression, will help you to solve. So if you are going to use React, Angular, Vue, you should be familiar with the Iife. So let's see how to build an Iife. Of course, it has a lot of syntax, so follow me carefully as I guide you through. So we open parentheses, and inside these parentheses, we are going to define a function. So we define a function as function, and then we open another parenthesis and a set of curly brackets. Click on tab to bring it down, and then at the end of this we need to place a set of parentheses to execute this function, and we need a semicolon here. So this is one of the places where it is actually mandatory to put a semicolon in JavaScript. Like I told you, I always put semicolon at the end of my code, so it makes it easier for you not to memorize where you need the semicolon. So this structure, okay, we need a message here, so I can say console.log semicolon hello from Iife. Okay, so this structure tells JavaScript to define and immediately run this function within its scope. So let's see how to implement the Iife to help us solve this naming conflict. So let's say we create the Iife by using open parentheses, and inside this open parentheses we have function, and then we have another open parentheses, and then the curly brackets. Click on tab. At the end of this curly bracket, we are going to have another open parenthesis semicolon, and this open parenthesis means that the function will execute itself immediately. Okay, so now we can create our own function that we want to call in our script. So I could say greet student is equal to function, then parentheses, we have the curly brackets. Click on tab, we print a message console.log hello student. Okay, so I will comment out the first examples that we did. Okay, greet student, console.log, hello student. If we keep it this way, this is a private function and we are not able to access it. So to access it, we need to create a variable or a parameter as part of this function. So we can go to this place and add an example app. So I use app here because of we are inside the app.js folder. So it's a variable. And then because of that, I can say app.greetUser. So this means that we are no longer referring to the global scope, but we are restricted to saying that look for app.greetStudent, not any other greetStudent function. So there could be a greetStudent function in the global scope or in other scripts, but we are not interested in that. That's what we are saying here. And so in this open parenthesis, we say window.app is equal to window.app or open parenthesis. So what this is saying is that we are passing a window.app to the Iife function, and this expression is saying if it does not exist, we pass it as an object. So if we print our console, if say console.log log tab window.app, we see that inside our window.app we have a function called greetStudent. So in case in our window.app we do not have this, if there is nothing there, it's going to return an empty object. So I could comment out this function that I created in this Iife control case, and then you see that we have an empty object. So that is what this line 470 is saying. So we are passing the window.app to the function, to the Iife function, and if it doesn't exist, it returns an empty object. And comment this. So if we want to print the function in our own script and not in any other library or global scope, we can just say console.log app. Okay, I don't need to console.log app.greetStudent because we already have a console.log inside that function. So we just need to call that function app.greetUser. So say app.greetUser, we call it, and then we have hello student. Now if we uncomment the function from the greetStudent, we uncomment this, you see that the function greetStudent from the global scope is there, hello from another script, but when we use app.greetStudent, we are specific with the function that we want it to run, and that's why we have hello student that prints. So I hope this is quite explanatory. If you have understood it so far, give me a thumbs up, a comment, and if you have not subscribed to my channel, please kindly subscribe. So another thing is that we could actually have classes inside the Iife function. In one of my previous video, link in the description, I also discuss on classes. We can also add classes into our Iife function to make sure that this is the class that we are using exactly. So to do that, now remember this is the parameter that we'll be using app. So we can say, so let's say we want to create a student class. So we can say app dot, remember class starts with capital letter, so we can say app.student. I need a capital letter, not a small letter. App.student is equal to, it's a class, so it says equal to a class. So let's see if I give it tab, will I get autocomplete? No, it's equal to class and then curly brackets, click on tab. So remember that every class has a constructor that takes in the parameters of that class. So we say constructor, open brackets, then the curly brackets. So in this constructor, the parameters for this class, we can say first name and then last name and then age. So remember, we use a this keyword to say that whenever we create instances of this class, the name we use for the particular instance is what we want to use. Check out my video on classes for more explanation. So say this dot first name equals first name. Say this dot last name equals last name. Then we have this dot age equals age. And so we have created a class in our Iife function so that whenever we use the student class, we know that even if any other script has the class called student, it doesn't interfere with our own class functionality. So let's make use of this. We can create new instances of the class and we use const. Let's see, const student1 equals new. Now we need to use the parameter of the function which we call app. New app dot the class name, which is student, equals parentheses, and then we put in the parameters of the class or the properties for this particular student which were defined in the constructor. So the first property is what? First name. And first name is a string, so we have quotation and you can say Viktor and then your comma. The second property that we have here in the constructor is last name, Roland, and then you put a comma and then you check what's the third property that we have in the constructor, age. You could say 25, and we could also create another student, const student2 equals new. We use a new keyword to create a new instance of a class. Now, because we want the class from our own script, we say new app dot student class. So open the parentheses and put in the parameters, first name Stella, last name Roland, and then the age 21. So if we print the first name of the second student, we can say console.log student2 dot last name tab, and so we have Roland on the console. So this is very important because when you have a library, third-party library that has a class called students, you are not bothered whether you're going to step on toes. Interestingly, we can also extend our Iife function. So you don't always necessarily need to go back and then, oh, you forgot to add a function in here, or you forgot to add a class. You can always extend the Iife function anyway. So I could just come down here and add a new function to my Iife function, without going back to this spot to add it, So that's extension. So let's do it. So simply remember how to create the Iife function. We open parentheses, and then we write function, you open under parentheses, and then comes your curly brackets. You click on tab, and then before your semicolon, you put under open parentheses and semicolon. Now we go back to the open parentheses here and put the parameter that we'll be using for this Iife function. So we can say app. So now because it's app, it means we are extending this first Iife function that we used. Okay, now so we need to also make sure that if the function we are creating in this Iife function does not exist, it should create an empty object. So what we do is what? In the last open parenthesis we create window.app is equal to window.app if it exists, and if it does not exist, or return empty objects. So remember what we are trying to do here. We want to extend the Iife function that we created above by adding a new function. So let's say we want to create a new function called goodbye. Now remember that we need to say app dot, we write the variable name of the function. So goodbye student. So the function, so say, is equal to function, open parentheses, then curly brackets, console.log, say goodbye awesome student. Okay, so you can just comment this guy out. To print this to the console, you just call on that function and say app.goodbye student, and we have goodbye awesome students on the console. So we don't care if there's any other goodbye student in the other libraries or in the global scope. As long as you use Iife function, you are sure not to step on toes. So what if we want to create a separate namespace? So this is just simulating global conflict. We want to create a different namespace. We don't want to use just app. So we can do this, of course. To create an Iife muscle memory, open parentheses, and then you need to write function, open under parentheses, and then your curly bracket, you tab, and at the end, before your semicolon, another parentheses, semicolon, and this function takes a parameter called app. You can use anything here. And so because we want to create a a different namespace. In the second parenthesis that we created, we can say window is constant, window, then the name of the other namespace that we want to create. We can say the other app. So it's equal to window dot other app. If it doesn't exist, that's where the or come in, return an empty object. Okay, so now inside this our other app, let's create a function that is similar to what we have here, greet user, greet student. So we say app.greetStudent is equal to function, open parentheses, curly brackets, tab, and then we log this console.log hello from the other app. Hello from the other app. So now what we are trying to simulate is assuming we have a function from another library, okay? Or you can see the other way around, that you are creating a different namespace called other app. So to specifically reach out to the function in our other app, we can call it by saying, you can say other app dot greet student, semicolon at the end, and we have hello from the other app. So this doesn't really matter where you place it, okay? So we can cut this and put it right at the beginning of our code, and we still get hello from the other app. So it doesn't step on the toes of the greet student function that we have in our script. So this is the power of the Iife. We can have the same function, the same name, but in different location, and they will not override each other. So another interesting thing that we can do is that we can pass in parameters into an Iife function. You allow me to say that, and it allows us to, or this makes our code more flexible. So we can pass a name parameter into the Iife function, and we can also make this parameter a private field such that it will not be accessible outside the scope, so people cannot access this globally. So let's look at how to do this. So to create a parameter, we can say in the app here, we can say comma, we create the variable for that parameter. Let's say full name. So which means we are expecting a full name in our Iife function, and here we can say full name equals full name. So one last thing, then we can pass the parameter of the full name that we want at this point. You can say comma, so it's a full name undefined, so I could either define it here and say Viktor Roland. Now it's defined. So now this is a private field. This full name, which is Viktor Roland, is a private field because when, let me comment the rest out. So this is a private field because when we try to print app.fullname, it's not going to be accessible. So let's say console.log app.fullname. It says undefined, right? But if you want it to be accessible in the global scope, you can just say app.fullname. So you see that Viktor Roland is printed on the screen. So I could comment the other app message. So because we want to make this as a private variable, we remove the app and we pass in that parameter in the line where we define the window.app. We can use it inside the Iife scope. We can access it inside the scope, but not outside the scope of the Iife function. And after this, I will tell you a use case scenario. So we can say console.log and then backtick string interpolation and say hello, a $, curly brackets, and then hello full name. So when we call on the greet student function and say app.greetStudent, we should have the full name there. Yeah, hello student, and then hello Viktor Roland. So why you need to keep some properties private is, like we discussed in one of our video on objects, there are some fields like credit card details, tax ID that you don't want everybody to access. So you keep these fields private, and or maybe you want to calculate some figures and you only want the user to know the final result. You can keep the calculation private and then show the result at the end. So these are use cases for creating private fields. And this we're going to use a lot going forward. So take your time to practice this, see how to create the Iife function. And if you are following so far, don't forget to hit the like button, leave a comment, and if you have not subscribed, kindly subscribe. And there you have it. It's an introduction to the Iife in JavaScript, and it's very powerful to help you manage and prevent naming conflicts. So give it a try, practice, practice, practice. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.